Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. So, today's battle isn't something I ever thought I'd end up putting up on YouTube, because it's an operation, it's not a random battle, and well, when you've seen one operation, you've seen them all. However, when I put the post-battle results screen up as a YouTube post, everybody demanded that I show the replay, even though they knew it was just an operation, and not a random battle, because the numbers at the end of this battle are quite frankly ridiculous. And so, you asked for it, here it is. This is the all-new, all-singing, all-dancing, Tier 10 Pan-American, or specifically Argentine destroyer, La Pampa. And here is its funny button. Covert consumable readiness. Basically, as long as you stay undetected, this will charge up, and every time you score a torpedo hitting something, it charges up by 25%, so yeah. Score lots of torpedo hits. When it's active, it will reduce the cooldown of all of your existing consumables by 85%. Now, this is my first ever game in La Pampa. I did feature a replay of somebody taking it into a random battle and doing spectacularly well earlier on in the week. This, however, not a random battle. This is an operation. Generally, when I unlock a new ship, I tend to take it out in operations first, just to get a feel for it and tweak any commander skills and so on. See what works and what doesn't. As it happens, I'm not running the optimal commander skill build on this. You really should be taking the Swift in Silence skill, because the funny button depends on your not being detected. And Swift in Silence is basically a permanent engine boost, as long as you're not detected. And you're really going to want that skill, and you're going to want to be running a speed flag on this thing, because one of the La Pampa's major downsides is its really slow top speed of 34 knots. I think this may be the slowest Tier 10 destroyer, and a ship that relies on staying undetected, not just for its survival, but also to get the most out of the unique features that the ship brings, is going to be in serious trouble if it gets spotted and it can't outrun any other enemy destroyers. Bearing that in mind, I was thinking ahead, and for the captain of La Pampa, I'm using the seasoned Pan-American commander, whose name I cannot even begin to pronounce, but who was introduced with the Pan-American battleships, the Ipiranga, Los Andes, and Libertad. Because, well, one of the special things that he brings to the party is a speed boost after 2 activations of the funny button. And that speed boost does not rely on your staying undetected, and with this thing, every little bit of speed helps. Now, bearing in mind the absolutely absurd damage numbers that you're going to see at the end of this battle, remember, of the 15 torpedoes that I launched at the start of this battle, only 2 hit. So already this could have been better. Actually, there's a number of ways this could have been better. But that's the thing that I want you to bear in mind right now. Because, yes, that's La Pampa's party trick. It can put 15 torpedoes into the water at once. It's got 3 quintuple launchers, and then it's got a reload booster, so it can put 30 torpedoes into the water at once. And then it's got a funny button, which refreshes its consumables, so it can put, 45 torpedoes into the water, not all at once, but in very, very quick succession. And the reason why the numbers that you're going to see at the end of this battle are even possible is because I'm playing Operation Aegis. Now, you don't know which operation you're going to get when you queue up, but if you roll the dice and you get lucky and you're playing something like the USS Benham or this, there are a lot of enemy ships, particularly a Tier 10 operation where they inflate the hit point pool of the enemy ships that you're going to be facing. But there are a lot of enemy ships with a lot of hit points that all sail very, very predictable patterns. So if you're in something like the USS Benham at Tier 9, or La Pampa here at Tier 10, and you're not completely useless, you're going to do all of the damage. And I've already screwed up. I fat-fingered the consumables and I actually triggered the funny button before the reload booster. So I'm not actually getting the full value out of the funny button here. It's about to expire. There's a 26-second cooldown remaining on the reload booster, but as soon as the funny button ends, any second now, there, it's gone to 2 minutes, give or take. I mean, the cooldown on the reload booster is very, very long. It's something like 4.5 minutes. So I've actually shaved off 50% of the cooldown, rather than the 85% that the funny button should be capable of doing. However, the funny button charges up not just when you stay undetected, but by 25% for every torpedo hit you score. And I just scored 5 torpedo hits, and I'm about to score some more, so the funny button's ready to go again. And I screw up again here, because what I should be doing is hitting that funny button before I score another at least 4 torpedo hits. But I wait until after, and then I trigger the funny button, but, well, now I'm basically going to get the reload booster straight back up again. Thing is, though, there's not really a lot of point in using the torpedo reload booster now, because, well, there's not an awful lot left for me to torpedo, and I've only got a 30-second cooldown remaining on the torpedoes in the first place. However, observe what happens when the funny button goes back on cooldown. 2 things are going to happen. There's the most important thing, ship speed increased. And the other thing is combat instruction level raised. So if you look at the funny button, it didn't drop back down to 0, it dropped down to 20%. And because I'm still undetected, it's once again charging up. So these 2 things happen when you activate the funny button twice, and you've got the special South American commander, whose name I still can't pronounce, Brazilian commander, I believe, Portuguese-Brazilian, who came with the Pan-American battleships. That's his special thing. Well, it's one of his special things. So now I've got a permanent engine boost regardless of whether I'm spotted or not. I think it's only 5%, but, well, 34 knots top speed, this ship needs all the help it can get. And as you can see, I'm currently doing 37.5. Obviously, I also have a speed flag equipped for another 5%. If I had the Swift in Silence skill, well, I can actually show you how fast this thing can go if you also have the Swift in Silence skill and you can stay unspotted. Remember, base top speed, 34 knots. Same ship, start of a battle, so haven't raised the combat instruction level, haven't gotten the speed boost from the special commander, but I do have the speed flag and the Swift in Silence skill, 38.7 knots. With all of that and the speed boost from the special commander, 39, 40. It's not a slow destroyer anymore, is it? Except it actually is a slow destroyer. Don't be fooled, because remember, the majority of these buffs require that you remain undetected. While that's easy to do, in Operation Aegis, where you know exactly what ships are going to spawn where and what paths they're going to take, in a random battle, it's a different matter entirely. In fact, it's a different matter entirely in other operations. I played this thing in Operation Hermes, which was in fact the second battle that I played on the Pampa. And there's constantly aircraft overhead, so you're being spotted from the air, so you hide inside a smoke screen. And then you're getting hydroed. Because the enemies in that operation are all German destroyers, cruisers and battleships, and they've all got 6-kilometre hydro. Well, and just stay more than 6 kilometres away. Well, sure, but then you're getting spotted from the air, and they're still running their hydro, and you can't land the torpedoes because they can see them coming. And if you're not landing torpedoes and you can't stay undetected, well, 1, you're getting shot at, which is bad, but also, you're not charging up the funny button. And the funny button is what makes this ship dangerous. And it's even worse in random battles, because of the range of the torpedoes. 10.5 kilometres, which isn't bad, but there's something else in World of Warships that tends to have a range of around 10.5 kilometres. Radar. Or if it's Russian radar, 12 kilometres. And everything has radar in World of Warships these days. Even destroyers, even some battleships. You know, it's not just the USS Missouri anymore. So in a random battle, while on paper this is a superbly powerful destroyer, and it's still a good destroyer. I mean, it's got 15 torpedoes and a reload booster. So remember when they said they weren't going to give the Shimakaze a reload booster? Because 15 torpedoes and a reload booster was going to be overpowered? Yeah. So it's definitely still a good destroyer, but it's not as overpowered as you may have been led to believe. I mean, you see a La Pampa replay on YouTube, and it's obviously been cherry-picked. People don't send in the La Pampa replays where they're constantly spotted, they can't get the funny button charged up, they barely get any use out of the reload booster, and they end up in gunfights with enemy destroyers. And you do not want to get into a gunfight with an enemy destroyer in this thing, because the guns, and I think I'm being generous to them here when I say this, the guns are shit. It only has 4 of them, and while they do have a fast reload, they're only 113mm in caliber. They're not even 5-inch guns, which means they're basically only good for ensuring that you remain spotted after using them, and setting the occasional fire. And when this thing's spotted, it's not a fast destroyer anymore, and you can't escape. In an operation, especially Operation Aegis here, for all of the reasons that I've already talked about, it's very, very easy to take advantage of all of the benefits that this ship brings. In a random battle, where you've got the constant threat of being spotted from the air, detected by radar, detected by hydro, or just have the misfortune to run into an enemy destroyer that outspots you and you probably aren't going to be able to outrun, it is extremely difficult to have a great game in this thing. It's not impossible, but you need to be either very good or very lucky, or a combination of both. Because under normal circumstances in a random battle, I mean, the Pampa is still a good destroyer, but under normal circumstances, you're not going to be doing no 500,000 damage in this thing. In fact, the circumstances in this particular operation, aside from the fact that it's Operation Aegis, and I know exactly where everything's going to spawn, and I know exactly what routes they're going to take, but even then I got very lucky because I'm the only destroyer. I've had other games, not necessarily in the Pampa, but where the destroyers are all fighting each other to land the torpedo hits. But that wasn't the case here. I mean, they were basically all just lining up for me to torpedo them. When these two Yamatos spawn, by the way, give them time to settle on their course and speed, because they do change direction when they spawn into the map. So don't just launch the torpedoes instantly, otherwise they're all going to miss. That's the only real challenge over there, the Grosser Kurfürst. Because that thing, and one of the special victory conditions for this particular operation are that you sink all three of these battleships, the two Yamatos and the Grosser Kurfürst. The two Yamatos aren't a problem. The Grosser Kurfürst is, because it does not follow a predictable path. And it's a Grosser Kurfürst, so it has hydro. And it's German hydro, so it lasts forever, and you can see, well, it can see your torpedoes coming from miles away. So in order to successfully land torpedoes on that thing, you have to get uncomfortably close, just to give it less chance of dodging them. And while they're not slow torpedoes, you know, they're not pan-European torpedoes. They're not doing 72 knots or 85 knots. They have a speed of 66, which is all right, but if you're detecting them from 4.5 kilometers away, it's not that difficult to dodge them. We're up to 490,000 damage. By the end of this battle, I will have launched 120 torpedoes, and 44 are going to hit. So it's in the ballpark of a 20% hit rate, which is about what you'd expect in any destroyer. It's just the number of torpedoes that this thing can launch. And I say can launch, because under normal circumstances in a random battle, you're never going to get that number of torpedoes away. You just won't stay undetected for long enough to charge up the special abilities. It can happen. I mean, I featured a replay earlier this week where somebody in La Pampa managed to launch 110 torpedoes, so not that far off from what I've accomplished here. But in order to do that in a random battle, you need to be both very lucky and very good. And mostly very good at just staying out of range of detection. Which is obviously going to limit the chances of any torpedoes that you do launch actually connecting with the target. Or the target still being alive and not being taken out by your teammates by the time your torpedoes get there. In an operation, though, I mean, especially this one, it's difficult not to hit things with your torpedoes, and it's very, very easy to remain undetected. La Pampa definitely requires a very specific set of circumstances in order to realise its full potential. And those are the kind of circumstances that are just not guaranteed to happen every time you queue this thing up for a random battle. I mean, I still like it, because 15 torpedoes and a reload booster is still pretty good, but it's nowhere near as overpowered as you might have been led to believe by, well, myself cherry-picking La Pampa replays and putting them up on YouTube. Most of the time when you take this thing out in a random battle, it's not going to go so well, which is true of any ship. But it's particularly true of this thing, because in order to realise its potential, it must remain undetected. And there are so many things working against you in a random battle that are unpredictable, which means that is going to be very, very hard to do. In an operation, though, holy shit, this thing's good. And it's one hell of a moneymaker, because of course it's a premium. So that was nearly 1 million credits, with 537,000 damage from 44 torpedo hits after having launched 120. And remember, not only was this the first game I'd ever played in it, but I made a couple of errors. The first 15 torpedoes that I launched, only 2 of them hit. That could have been a lot better. And I didn't have the swift and silent skill, so this was actually still quite a slow destroyer, even though I remained undetected almost the entire game. Also, there was a point near the beginning where I fat-fingered my consumables and triggered them in the wrong order, so I didn't actually get the full value out of the diminished cooldown on my first torpedo reload booster. So if I'd done this properly, I could have very easily posted 600,000 damage. I mean, it's not difficult. And of course, I was the only destroyer in play, so I wasn't competing against other destroyers for landing torpedo hits. So this was basically as good as it was possible to get in La Pampa. And I still could have done better. In a random battle, though, where you don't know where the enemies are going to appear from, and they don't sail in... Well, okay. Some of them don't sail in straight lines and the same course and speed. And where there's radar and aircraft launched from hybrids and carriers, and there's intelligent use of hydro, and the enemies don't instantly and automatically trigger their damage control the second they receive a damage over time effect. Yeah. Good luck replicating these kind of results. Honestly, good luck, because you're going to need it. Anyway, by popular request, that was my first battle in La Pampa. And don't worry, I'm not planning on making a habit out of posting operations replays, because you've seen one operation. You've pretty much seen them all. But you all demanded that I show this particular replay, so there it is. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it's helped dispel some of the myth of invincibility around this ship, because it is a good ship, but it's nowhere near as good as it appears to be on paper. As always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.